Hey everybody, KMO here. I'm down at the Bellows Falls Riverfront Park, and today can definitely not be a walk and talk video because the ground is frozen solid and I would slip and you would have video evidence of my my injury, which I would like to avoid. So I haven't talked about the book The Narrow Corridor by Acemoglu and Robinson this week, and the series isn't complete. In fact, I haven't even finished the book. I keep going back and reviewing previous chapters rather than pushing on to the end, which, when I get into a book that's really meaty and I'm getting a lot out of it, I get more out of it by reviewing the familiar parts rather than pushing further, toward the end. And also, I just get to a point where I don't really want the book to be over. So, it's not like a novel. It's not like there's a plot that I'm hanging, on the edge of my seat wondering how it turns out. This is, it's a study of an idea. And I know most of you are familiar with the idea, but I'll recap it real quick, just for form's sake. The question is, why do states respect the liberty of their individuals? The ones that do, why do they do? The ones that don't, why not? And Acemoglu and Robinson, their idea is that the path between two unfortunate outcomes is a narrow one. They call it the narrow corridor, and this is the corridor between the situation where a society has way more power than the state. In fact, in some places there is no state, or the state is just a token, like Lebanon. And in other places, the state is much, much more powerful than the society and is despotic, as in North Korea. Now, Lebanon is not really the opposite of North Korea. Lebanon's a bit of a special case. I mean, typically when we say that the society is, much stronger than the state, that's called a failed state. But really, I would argue that a failed state is one in which, the state doesn't have any particular power, there is no credible state, but also the society doesn't have enough power to control the violence. It doesn't have enough sway over the actions of the powerful and the ambitious to blunt their rapacious excesses. So, in that instance, we get something like, the Somalia that we see in Black Hawk Down, a place ruled by warlords, and the only check on a warlord's power, really is other warlords. The U.S. is on site and, flexing from time to time, but not being fully committed, not really having a clear mission as, what they're supposed to be doing there. They're more an inconvenience to the warlords than they are an actual threat. The real threat comes from their rivals, but not from a state and not from the power of society to control and check the ambitions of the would-be powerful. So the narrow corridor, it's not a static state. It is a path through history. And the power of society will wax and wane. The power of the state can wax and wane. But, each is trying to grow. And as long as they grow roughly in proportion to the growth of the other, then a society can remain within the narrow corridor, that narrow corridor of conditions which allows for, the protection of individual liberty. Well, it is my opinion that information technology, machine learning, big data, ubiquitous surveillance, all the stuff I usually talk about, is in the process of handing enormous new powers to the state. And if state power grows rapidly, social power has to grow to match it. If not, we'll veer out of the narrow corridor into the despotic state. So how can society mobilize and make new demands upon the state? Well, it seems to me that's what Andrew Yang is talking about with the freedom dividend, and it's what Bernie Sanders is talking about with the federal jobs guarantee, Medicare for all, free college tuition, and all the demands that he intends to make upon the state in terms of addressing climate change. I come from a libertarian background, and while I'm not doctrinaire libertarian anymore, I still have sympathies for people who inhabit that ideological space, and this is largely a message to them. It is, I understand. I get what you're saying about, free stuff and taking from the productive to give to the non-productive, and how that is going to diminish the capacity of society rather than enhance it. But I just need to impress upon you that this information technology stuff is not going away, and it is an enormous boost to the power of intelligence agencies, police agencies, the military, and all of those sectors of the government that you find so objectionable. They are getting stronger. And I know that your solution to blunting the growth of that strength is to decrease the size of government, take powers away from government, but that's not the trajectory we're on. It's just not. So I think making new demands upon the government and saying, look, as yesterday's guest, Michael Varhola, says, we have to fund what we value, and the ethical thing for us to value is the quality of life of our citizens and the opportunities for our citizens. And I would add the likelihood that any given member of this society can reach their full potential, can actualize themselves. And it's not an airy-fairy sort of feel-good wish. It is a very practical imperative. In order to prevent the rise of despotism, high-tech digital despotism in the 21st century, we need to put additional demands upon the state. And some of the most coherent demands that have been put forward recently are mobilize to address climate change, get off of the side of the oligarchs, stop assisting in the concentration of wealth and power. And, one of the things that a shackled Leviathan, which is the Leviathan that is in the narrow corridor, the one that has great capabilities, great capacity, but also respects the liberty of its citizens, the shackled Leviathan, in order to remain in that state and not veer off to the despotic Leviathan, the shackled Leviathan must, in the words of the authors, mobilize society. Well, wouldn't giving people $1,000 a month, people for whom $1,000 a month would make a big difference in their lives, wouldn't that help to mobilize their ambitions, their dreams, their desires, their hopes, their vision for a better future? To me, it seems like it would. So, I'm going to leave it there. That's how as if you've been watching these, universal basic income or the freedom dividend is not the thing that I like best about Andrew Yang and his platform, and his approach. I just like his vision. I like the scope of the things that he's taking into account that, none of the other characters up on stage, none of them have demonstrated that they are capable of addressing the specific challenges that information technology presents in the 21st century. So, this is my way of coming around to embracing universal basic income. I mean, as soon as the first check arrived or the first $1,000 payment hit my bank account, I would be swayed. My doubts would go right out the window. But that could largely be written off as me immediately becoming dependent on it, such that I stopped questioning it. So I haven't received it yet. Don't expect to, actually, because I don't have any anticipation that Andrew Yang is going to win the primary. But I'm coming to embrace it. This is me coming around and saying, yeah, there's a really good practical imperative for putting a new demand upon the government. And $1,000 a month to every citizen, that's a good start. And that's all it is a start. We'd have to do more. All right, talk to you tomorrow.